All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of, this is the show where we talk about whatever we decide to talk about for the week or the day or whatever the night, whatever it is at this moment. And last week, I was my first episode that I did with Jeff, who's back with me again, one of my
Yo,
best
yo.
friends. So, he wasn't gonna not be a part of this. I get that. And we did a pretty nerdy thing that I always talk about is Batman Good for Gotham. I thought it was a pretty good conversation. I thought we had a lot of fun and actually broke down a lot of like weird things that people don't think about when we think about like, is Batman good for Gotham? And I wanted to do that here again with this one where we will be talking about, is blackwashing a thing? And I'll start with you, Jeff. What if you had to say, like, let's start with the idea of whitewashing, right?
Mhm.
What is your definition of whitewashing? Like, what would you consider whitewashing?
For me, whitewashing is very straightforward. It is the idea in Hollywood that they always have to take liberties with certain characters. And okay, we can understand if you're doing a movie about something that you don't know or something that you can't recreate. Like, we understand that we're going to have classically trained English actors do anything that has to do with the old world. We
Right.
get that. But when you got a movie called Gods of Egypt starring Gerard Butler, that's where, it's like, I don't care if it's mythology, I don't care if it's history. If it's something that has to do with a region that has facts, science, and just general knowledge, and you completely rewrite it so that we can have Matt Damon star in The Great Wall, that's whitewashing. Okay. For me, that's whitewashing when
Right.
there is a regional, historical, or racial background and Hollywood shoehorns a white person into the role, regardless of the context or the history. That's whitewashing.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I see that for sure. Eddie, what do you think?
Uh, what was the question again?
And we're off to a great start.
Yeah, the question is, what by your definition, by your however you view it, what would you consider whitewashing?
No, basically whitewashing is so I'd say when a role doesn't have to necessarily have like a white like a Caucasian male or female in a role, and they still cast a white person in a role. I feel like that would be whitewashing. So let's say like an example, like for Harry Potter, when they wanted to make Hermione black, but then everyone got really upset because she was white in all the movies. Emma Watson playing Hermione,
Right.
but she wasn't canonically any sort of race. So people really shouldn't get upset over something like that because it's all up to the artist's vision or whoever the director is. But that would be like an example of whitewashing when they include Caucasian people in roles that don't necessarily have to have those types of people of that color in those roles. And it gets worse when you have actual roles that would make sense for somebody else, like a person of color, to be cast into those roles, but then they ended up getting taken by a white person. So like you have like what was the movie you just said? Gods of Egypt.
Yeah.
It takes place in the Middle East, right?
Well, Egypt specifically, but yeah.
Specifically, yeah. And you have darker, browner people there, but if you're gonna cast Gerard Butler, who is this white Caucasian male in the role,
With that accent especially.
that would definitely be whitewash.
All right, Wayne, you want to take a shot at this? Do you need the question repeated? Or are you good?
No, I'm good.
All right.
No, I agree with Jeff. I think that, if the role is specific to a region or specific to a historical, minority, let's say, Matt Damon in The Great Wall is nonsense. That's ridiculous. Gods of Egypt, I'm a little bit lighter on, actually, because of the fact that it's fiction. I think when it get to fiction, you have a little bit more liberties that you can take. And especially with Gods of Egypt, the Gods of Egypt were blue, green. One had a jackal head, one had a parrot head, So I don't mind so much, again, having Gerard Butler as a god. Now, where I think that you guys should have an issue is where the mortals in Egypt were all white as well. I mean, they should have been, darker skinned, more Middle Eastern looking, Arab looking, or black, and they weren't. I don't think I saw a single person of color in the entire cast. So I didn't have a problem.
Chadwick Boseman was actually the
the
only person of color in this movie.
So, I didn't have a problem with the gods themselves not being of color, but there should have been 99% of the mortals should have been.
Right. For me, I would say pretty much parrots what everybody else has been saying for the most part. I think whitewashing is when you take away the racial or cultural identity of a character to basically just to cast somebody who is Caucasian for the matter. Like Gods of Egypt, Wayne, you actually make a really good point, because I never even looked at it like that, where in mythology, the gods aren't really a set color. They're all kinds, their forms aren't even describable for the most part, except for, like Horus, Anubis, the what they call the lesser gods in that sense. But we, for one, like Exodus, which had Sigourney Weaver and Christian Bale, that would be taking away somebody's cultural identity. Or even like what's her name? Tilda Swinton playing the Ancient One in Doctor Strange was a, pun intended, strange casting decision for me, because
that was
an old
Disney.
Asian man. You said, it was. So
that was all Disney though.
And that to me is because, and they also with Disney, they kind of overcompensate both ways. I feel like that's one of their biggest problems, because they were like, well, we made Baron Mordo black, so why can't we change this? It was like, well, making Baron Mordo black didn't really take anything away from the character. And that is where we get to the issue of blackwashing. I have really seen this more recently, like in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, where people are not just upset, but like livid at certain characters' races being changed to black or to Hispanic or to Asian. And I don't understand it. Like, can anyone show me an example of blackwashing that took something away from the character?
I actually have perhaps like my strongest 2 examples. And one of them was more recent. This one just was like a bombshell recently. And that was DC, of course, once again deciding, hey, Kal-El's going to be black for no reason other than the publicity bump, because I didn't even know about it. I learned it through you. I had to start Googling, because like all of Black America immediately took to social media and they were like, hey, what about this other guy? And I'm like, who? I didn't even know. And what was his name again?
Icon.
Okay, thank you. So I was like, I started searching this, and I'm like, wait, like, I try to keep up on characters, but I'm like,
it's hard. There's a lot.
I had no clue about this character, and I'm like, damn, like that's a route they could have gone, but instead, because we've had so many production missteps and so much backstage drama and failed revenue, and we're just so desperate to keep up with the MCU. What should we do? We're gonna make Superman black. And we're like, wait, aren't you guys like trying to be like hip deep into your Snyderverse, Whedonverse? Like, you guys can't even decide what you're doing over at DC, so they're gonna do another reboot just to get a bump. That's one example that I could think of, but the one I have for sure that really irked me, just because this one does change a dynamic. I love how Kate Mara and Michael B. Jordan are somehow brother and sister for the Fantastic Four reboot. And that's the only example I can think of that is solid. Like, that is a case where if you had told me that Sue Storm was also going to be black, okay, they're brother and sister. They're both black.
Right.
There's nothing there that says they can't be of any race. They have to be brother and sister.
Well, they try to, in the movie, they kind of try to explain it away by saying that the parents married each other after the kids were born, kind of deal.
Which changes the entire...
It does change the dynamic.
Yeah, and that is the only solid example I can think of, honestly, of any case where I would say, come on now. Like that's just...
I think I get what you're saying. I think more or less, though, that's an oversight on continuity, because I don't think Johnny Storm being black took anything away from the character.
No.
I do think them not being brother and sister kind of took away from the character. However, they could have easily fixed that by having them all be black or all be white, either way.
Exactly.
And they chose to go, like I say, I think especially with geek fandoms, a lot of times what they try to do is overreach. Instead of just like simply make, okay, this family is this, that's it. They try to make it so like so everyone is kind of accepting of it in a way, but it never really works that way, because somebody's going to be upset no matter what happens. So you kind of have to you either have to go all in or you know, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You, Eddie, you got any examples of perceived blackwashing?
Well, I remember we talked about this a little while ago, casting Will Smith as Deadshot. For like the new Suicide Squad movie. I don't think it's that big of a deal that they cast him as Deadshot, just as long as Will Smith, because he's this very he gets casted in roles where he himself, like the persona that he's created for himself in Hollywood, overshadows a lot of the characters that he plays.
Agreed.
So when you cast Will Smith, you're not really casting, him to be Deadshot. It's more like you're casting Deadshot to be Will Smith, or like
right.
So I wouldn't consider that like blackwashing per se, but I would say that that character choice could have probably been left to like a different actor, probably like a smaller actor who could have fit that role a lot better.
Yeah, I'm always in agreement that small actors are better in like larger than life roles, because then like you said, even when like Robert Downey Jr. got Iron Man, at that point in his career, he wasn't Robert Downey Jr. I still remembered him as the guy who was just getting out of prison not too long ago. So, like I was kind of like, Robert Downey Jr., what is he going to do? Cocaine on the set? Like, what are we talking about? But, it ended up being a game changer for him. And now we look at Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. like they're interchangeable. And exactly what you said about Will Smith, I think he kind of overpowered the role of Deadshot and who he was as a character, because I didn't feel that at all, like in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. And it should have been left to a lesser known actor for sure. All right, Wayne.
Yeah, I definitely. So there's two ways that this can be done, right? And I know I'd mentioned that if you replace somebody who's historically one color with somebody who's a different color, then that's one thing. Like you casted Will Smith as Abraham Lincoln, right?
Yeah,
like
we
know that historically Abraham Lincoln was white. Right?
Oh yeah, but, it's right there in the vampire movie.
So that would be blackwashing. But then I think that there's the other type of blackwashing or whitewashing, whichever way it goes, which is where you intentionally put somebody in there that's a different color. Like hey, I know that this guy's not this color or this girl's not this color, but I'm going to change it anyways, where it's an intentional switch. I think that's kind of the same thing too. And so for me, I know you brought up Kal-El or bring up a black Superman, right? And I remember seeing some reports that, Michael B. Jordan could play Superman, right? I was up in arms about this, not because he was black, but because I think he's a horrible choice for Superman.
Agreed. He can't play him.
Right. But I have no problem with him having a black Superman. I have no problem with Idris Elba being James Bond. They're fictional characters, and if you have an actor that can do the role and do it justice, I don't really care what color they are. I think historical figures should be, what they are, but fictional characters, it doesn't matter. So the one you asked for more examples of quote unquote blackwashing, obviously the big story that came out that got all the white people up in arms, right, was the Little Mermaid being cast as black. And I don't have a problem. They're mer people. I mean, what color are mer people?
I've never seen one.
I don't care what color Ariel is, and I don't care if Prince Eric is white as well. And that's another thing I think that'll put people up in arms. Believe it or not, all the racist people out there, they'll be upset that Ariel's black, and if you make Eric white, oh my goodness, they're gonna go off the deep end, you know.
Yeah.
But who cares? It's a fairy tale. Like, they don't specify the color in the story. It's based on a storybook, you know. So I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it, but I do think it exists on both sides. And it's just it's frustrating to see people get upset about it.
Yeah, agreed. I think for the most part, I can't think of any like glaring examples of when like a black character took over a white character and it took away from what was supposed to be happening regardless. And I think the closest I got while I was thinking about it was Gridiron Gang, when the character that The Rock plays and Exhibit, for that matter, are both white characters. But I also think that was a better move for black youth who were watching, because up until this point, we've always gotten so many what they call white savior stories, like Dangerous Minds and Freedom Riders, where it's like, oh, there's these troubled black and you know, Latino youth, and they're just troublemakers, and there's nothing they can do. Better send in the white teacher to come and teach them about poetry or some shit like that. Like, you know, and I thought it was good to see like two black coaches or correctional officers try to turn these kids' life around, instead of that way. It feels more genuine that way. It doesn't feel like, you know, what they call white guilt, I guess, is the new term that I've just been learning over the past couple of years. But I think we see it more in fandoms now. Like when Iris West was casted as, or what, I don't even know her name, but when she was cast as Iris West in The Flash, and people were kind of like, but Iris West is historically white. I'm like, historically? You know, she's like you said, Wayne, she's fictional. How is she historically anything? It doesn't really go that way. And also, it doesn't take away from who that character is. Like, even with the Spider-Man thing, where everybody thought Zendaya was going to be Mary Jane, if you can point to me where Mary Jane's whiteness is a core part of her character, then I would agree. But I've never seen that. She is an aspiring actress who lives in New York. It's like every woman who lives in New York, regardless of race.
Yeah, if her parents are members of Augusta National, it doesn't make sense. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the bigger problem with that I've had over the years with the outrage for an influx of black characters in roles that they normally wouldn't be, like Michael B. Jordan in, say, Fantastic Four, or, you know, some of the characters in the Arrowverse being different, or whatever the case may be, is that for us as, like, you know, as people of color, we haven't gotten the chance to see a lot of people of color in any kind of major roles, because the default, since, you know, film has existed, has always been white. So it feels like, when I think Chris Rock made a joke about it at the Oscars when he was talking about Leonardo DiCaprio always being up for an Oscar and never winning, but, you know, there's a lot of black actors who don't even get the opportunity to be up for an Oscar because those roles aren't given to them. And I just wanted you guys to talk about that a little bit. Like, what do you think? Do you think that there are roles that are being deliberately, like, taken out of, I wouldn't say taken out of black hands, but specifically written for, like, white people, so it's harder for black actors to really have those opportunities in the same way, or is there something else there? Jeff, you want to take that one first?
Okay. So we look at movies that are made, and it doesn't matter what the context is. It's like you said, the white savior, it always seems to come up. And I mean, we got to thank Paul Mooney for delivering great lines on that one, because The Last Samurai, starring Tom Cruise, you know, and things like that. So it's like, you have certain roles in Hollywood, and saying, are these roles written so that black people can't get them? It's kind of like a default, because it's like, you know, another great perhaps the greatest deconstruction of Hollywood ever was Tropic Thunder, because there's a role for a black man, and brilliantly they have Robert Downey Jr. do blackface because they needed the 7-time Academy Award winner to be the heavyweight on the set. And that's an exaggeration, but we see it, you know, we've seen it throughout all of Hollywood history. So it's like, it's not that it would be like kind of how the Cinderella thing worked out, you know? Yeah, of course you can go to the ball. You just got to make sure you clean the house, scrape the gutters, paint the house, reshoe the horses, milk the bull, you know. It's like, wait, what? You know?
I hope she's not milking no bull.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, no, they have the same opportunities. It's just, you know, this movie is in historical context and it takes place in 1800s London. So of course we can't hire any black people. Okay, but what about Lord of the Rings, the freaking Academy Award powerhouse that is in a fantasy world? And there are, you know, when was the first time you saw a black person in the Lord of the Rings? The entire everything.
I haven't seen the whole thing, so I'm not gonna try to.
Okay, well, I love the Lord of the Rings, all of it, right? I do love it, and
That's your fault.
No, it's not my fault. Okay, learn to love them. But the first time you actually see a black person, like an actual black person, not a black person playing one of the orcs, you know, an actual black person in the entire universe of the Lord of the Rings in all of Middle Earth was in Lake Town, a town that was overridden by poverty. It's like, oh, what are the odds? You finally found a bunch of black people.
Yeah, it's kind of fucked up.
It's like the only black people you ever see are in Lake Town right before it gets destroyed. It's like, I didn't see any black people after that. I'm just saying, you know, I'm just saying, I did not see a single black person.
I'm going to have to look for that.
Yeah, that was that would have been Desolation of Smaug and Battle of the Five Armies. It was the Hobbit trilogy.
Okay. That's even after Lord of the Rings. So it's,
well, technically it's a prequel.
Well, no, so I mean, like it's made after, which means even after that, they're still kind of like, we don't need them.
Yeah, they finally were like, oh,
damn, that's crazy.
There aren't any black people here. What do we do? Just find a reason to have a bunch of peasants, and you know, it's just like, okay, I guarantee, I haven't seen it, but I guarantee you, in Exodus, the only black people that they had in that movie were probably slaves, right?
Yeah.
I
haven't seen it either.
Yeah, I'd be willing to bet, you know, but the roles are just designed to be for the stars. You know, you think of black stars and you know, it's a very short list. You know,
Denzel is always the first name that comes to my mind.
You think of Denzel, you think of Will Smith, and
it falls off around there.
Yeah. Are we talking comedy? Because now we can bring up a couple more people, but if you're talking about no longer has a time limit. I don't know what that
I don't know. I just keep it going. I'm not worried about what they're talking about.
Okay, so, and that's really it. It gets lost in the shuffle of, you know, they want to care about historical context when it has to do with Caesar, when it has to do with King George, when it has to do with colonial America, minus, you know, that other thing that was happening in colonial America, you know. But if you were to cast a black Jesus, all of a sudden it's like, and it's like, I'm going off of the region, and a black Jesus makes more sense than Christian Bale as Moses, or Tarrenton, whatever his name, as Ramses.
Yeah.
But you know, they're very selective of when they want to throw a temper tantrum, and sometimes it backfires on them. Like when Scarlett Johansson, who I think was a perfect actress, because she had the look, she had the ability, but she should not have been in Ghost in the Shell. That's just like, come on.
Oh yeah,
that was a bad one.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, and that's a case where she was capable. She had the look, but still, it was such a misfire. And that would be like, okay, we get the very capable, the very fan favorite. Think of a old white actor that everyone loves, and I think Christopher Walken or Ian McKellen to play Nelson Mandela. You know, it's like come on, man. So
it's egregious, man.
Yeah,
it's just straight up egregious. But I have to say it. I would pay a lot of money to see Christopher Walken play Nelson Mandela.
They've had me here in this hole. I'm tired. I want freedom for everyone.
It would be too much. It would be too much.
I can't even think. How
All
great
right,
that would be.
Eddie, what about you, man? How do you what do you think? Do you think it's I don't want to say, because I don't think it's malicious in any way. I just think it's the way, like, if Martin Scorsese writes a film, a lot of times it's probably a mobster film. It's probably a gangster film. So it's not going to have a lot of roles in that role for a lot of black actors, especially in the lead. You look at The Departed and stuff like that. Like, we're talking about Boston street toughs, and you don't really think about, when you think about Boston street toughs, or you think Ben Affleck and Matt Damon immediately, because they've been in those roles a bunch of times. It's playing kids from Boston. What do you think, Eddie?
So I think that there's a lot more movies nowadays that are starting to cast like a variety of actors and not just sticking to like the Caucasian males for like those roles. But honestly, I also kind of feel bad because when you have like somebody who's casted, like for example, who was it that got casted for Little Mermaid?
For who?
Who was it that got casted for Little Mermaid?
One of the Haley something. Haley, I don't remember her name. I know who it is, but I don't know who it is.
Well, like people were mad about it. It kind of sucks because now she has like this extra pressure to succeed in that role, and like show that she was a good choice. And honestly, that kind of sucks because you don't have like if it was a white actor and that movie failed, you wouldn't have like the same reaction. It would just be like, oh, it's just another one of those Hollywood remakes of a classical film that just tanked, and that's okay. But because it's a black actor now, people are gonna be more upset about it, and they'll have that focus of, oh well, why'd you cast I want to look.
I you know what? It's funny because I get what you're saying. Now that you're saying it, I never really thought about it. This because when the Beauty and the Beast remake came out, I didn't really hear a lot about the pressure to succeed on this movie or anything like that. It was just kind of like, another remake. It'll either be good, and if it's not, who cares? We still have the original. Like, I didn't really get a lot of that, but I felt like you're right. A lot of people were kind of, well, I don't know if she felt it or because she's never said anything about it, but there might be like an extra layer of pressure to succeed, because then if you don't succeed, does it become the argument of like, oh, we shouldn't have cast a black actress because that's what happens, or kind of deal. There was that thing that people said black people couldn't succeed or couldn't make a Hollywood blockbuster, and then Black Panther kind of shattered that myth, but it hasn't really been done since. So is there something to that? Are there other variables and tangibles that I'm missing?
Yeah, I think there's actually kind of, I think, like an ingrained, I want to say racism, you know what I mean? But it's not, like you said, malicious. It's hard to say that there's a type of racism that isn't malicious.
Right.
But you know what I mean? There is. And I think there's people who like, they grow up a certain way, they see a certain thing, and then they think that way. And so I think like you were talking about, like the actors. Well, who's the last black actors that we think of that have won Academy Award for Best Picture? Right? Denzel Washington. He played a slave, and he played, Malcolm X. We look at Morgan Freeman, played a teacher at an inner city black school. In order for a person of color to win an Academy Award, they have to play a role that's designated for a person of color. The reason Black Panther did so well is it takes place in Wakanda, right? I mean, if it took place in New York City, would they really have made the entire cast black?
Probably I think not, yeah.
Right. And so I think that it was almost like, oh, we have to do this, and that's why it happened. And it's a shame because, and I'll say I'm somewhat guilty of it myself. Like I mentioned to you when you were to ask me about being on the show, we do a show called Recast It, where we recast, movies that have been made 20 years ago with new cast.
Right.
And we did Armageddon. And I said, all right, well, who do I want as Harry Stamper, the Bruce Willis role? And I thought about it. I said, who do I really want? Who has the personality, the intelligence, the gruffness, the leadership skills? I thought of Denzel Washington. Right. But when I casted him, I said, all right, I'm going to cast Denzel in this role. There was part of me that felt like, should I be doing this? But then I was like, why shouldn't I? It's a fictional character. Denzel fits the role. But again, there's a part of us, I think, that feels like, well, these roles have to go to white people, and it's not meant to be like we're trying to hold anybody down. It's just like, well, why would I give this role? Like Chadwick Boseman, obviously, Black Panther blew up. He was huge, 42, but when he did, whatever it was there, the draft day, right? Nobody knew who he was, right?
Wait, he was in draft day? I didn't even see them.
Yeah, he was the number one draft pick, the linebacker. He was,
God damn it.
but he was in that. Nobody knew who he was in that, right?
Right.
And so but you're thinking like, why am I going to give this guy Chadwick Boseman a role? When I could give that same role to, Christian Bale, who is interested.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, don't you want the bigger name? If I'm a director, I want the bigger name, and if I'm a producer, I want the bigger name, even though Chadwick Boseman is a capable actor, he's not going to put butts in the seats,
Right.
And so, and unfortunately, the majority of big name actors, like you guys were saying, who are the big name black actors, right? You can name like 4 or 5 of them. And that's because they don't get a chance to play those diverse roles. Like if you're a black actor, you have to try out to be the gang member, the teacher at the inner city school, the civil rights leader. You can't be in a John Grisham movie.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because that's how you're going to expand. Will Smith is an incredible actor, and he's been able to do diverse roles because somebody gave him a shot. But unfortunately, I don't think enough people of color are getting those chances to play those diverse roles. They're like kind of pigeonholed into certain roles.
Mm-hmm.
That's agreed. A while ago, a couple of years ago, I was doing a podcast with my mom, and I had my dad and my uncle on, and we were recasting the X-Men because I just thought it would be fun. And one of the things we ended up thinking, we was like, Rogue should be a black woman. And at first we kind of all we were all a little apprehensive too. We were kind of like, no, I don't know, man, because we're so used to seeing it one way. But after I thought about it, I was like, this is a sassy Southern lady. Like, why wouldn't Rogue be a black woman? I think it's the best opportunity because if we were looking at it, it just fit the bill. But we are kind of ingrained to see that, like, we see a big movie come out. It doesn't even have to be a big movie. We see a movie come out, the trailer comes out, and then we see Leonardo DiCaprio in it. Immediately, everybody's like, oh, this is going to be a great movie. No one even questions it, whether it looks good or not. We're like, this is going to be a great movie. I watched Great Gatsby. I didn't think it was that great, but you know what I mean? But it looked good because I trusted Leo to bring me good stuff over the years. I trust, I wouldn't say Johnny Depp because I'm not a huge fan, but there's a lot of like actors where you hear the name and immediately there's already going to be fanfare for the movie, regardless of what it is. I think you're right about the Chadwick Boseman thing, because outside of Black Panther being a Disney movie, I don't think it would have ever done the same kind of numbers if it was just a standalone on its own movie. I don't think people would have rushed to see it the same way, because I feel like Disney had a lot to do with it. Obviously, we've been following this MCU for almost 10 years at this point. So of course we're like, oh, the next one in the installment. So I think, it had a leg up on that one anyway, because when Blade came out, I didn't even remember it until my dad brought the VHS home. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, we weren't like, oh man, crazy. This Wesley Snipes is playing Blade. Like, nobody was even really talking about it, but then it became a cult classic accidentally. And now we have Blade 2 and Blade 3, and then we're doing another one because, people want to see it again. And I think that's a part of that too. I feel like you were saying, Wayne, when you say like a lot of times black actors are pigeonholed into certain roles because it's hard to see them in anything else. Like even Denzel Washington won an Academy for being the crooked cop in Training Day. You know what I mean? And it was just like, why? You know what I mean? Why couldn't it be the other way around? Even though I think he was great, but you know what I mean? It's just, you would like to see it more often to where it feels like a win and not kind of like all right, we got it. Jeff, any thoughts?
No, great points. And actually that I love this panel, because every time someone brings something up, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. Because you take one thing I never considered was the pressure, like the pressure to succeed. And, John Carter of Mars bombs. It's perhaps the biggest flop in Disney history. I love that movie. Theaters. Dude, I actually loved it. And it bombs. And you're right. Everyone's just like, what happened? Prince of Persia starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh my God.
It bombs, and no one's like,
no one cares.
No one cares. But when The Dark Tower starring Idris Elba bombs, it was a big deal. And I never even thought about that. And it's like, damn, right in the feels, because I loved The Dark Tower, and they did racial swaps from the source material. Mm-hmm. The gunslinger was white, and the shine boy, God, that just sounded so racist because I'm about to say the Shine Boy was black. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. It's
Okay. All right. I'm gonna. I'll do a couple Hail Marys for that one, I guess. But anyway, so they swap it, and I think I love that movie. Idris Elba killed it in that movie, and it flops, and it's like, you could hear the grumbling. Well, that's what happens when you start playing politics instead of making movies. And it's like, okay, but no one cares about, you know, uh, Jake Gyllenhaal being the Prince of Persia. So
And
it's funny how that happens. And yeah, we're so used to seeing that. It's like, oh, who's up for an Academy Award? Oh, a black person? Let me guess. Were they a slave, a servant, or a bad guy? It's like, what, who's won in the past aside from that? So it's like, no. And right now, a movie that's winning is what movie won? Okay, we look at the nominees. 12 Years a Slave. You look at the other nominee, Judas and the Black Messiah. Like, and when they had Black Panther up for the nomination, which would have been a huge win, everyone knew it's not going to win. Everyone knew. And it's a funny joke that just goes back to don't be a menace to South Central. Now, baby, there's no room for strong, independent black women in these movies. And it's like, that just sets the tone for the entire film and Hollywood. I hate to see what happens. And sometimes you're just like, you can tell when a publicity stunt is nothing more than a publicity stunt. Like the whole Superman thing.
Yeah.
That was just, wow, you guys can't, like, I don't know what they're doing over at DC. They're just like, well, if we throw more money at it, maybe it'll get better. And it's like, no, man, like what are you doing? Like, just stop. Take the time to reset.
I'll say, I think as far as like, because with DC goes, I feel like Marvel tries to be inclusive and sometimes they overreach. With DC, because of their history, there has been like, let's go back and just think about Batman. And then think about Superman, and then think about outside of Richard Pryor, which I don't understand why he was in the movie, but he was there. Then you have, you fast forward some years because we don't get any more DC for a while. They did a Catwoman movie with Halle Berry, and it was pretty cringy. But once again, that pressure, it was kind of like, oh, well, it bombed because it was Halle Berry and she couldn't carry the role, which I 100% agree with. But it became a thing about, can a black woman, command the lead in a movie like that? And then we fast forward. Let's even go to the Avengers. Outside of Nick Fury, there are no black, there's no Hispanic, there are no Asian, there are nobody else. The entire cast, the Avengers are white. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, because of that, they were like, okay, we have to get Falcon, we have to get War Machine, we have to get Gamora to be played by a black woman, even though she's going to be covered in makeup. We have to get all these characters. We're going to make this character gay. We're going to make this, because they're overreaching now, because they know that one way, if you just do it, people aren't going to be satisfied. If you do it the other way, people are going to be mad. If you do it the other way, people are going to be mad. So they're trying to appease the people who are more likely to go see the movie anyway, which makes sense. With DC, it's like the opposite. They're just like, we're pandering, because having just announcing that you're going to make a black Superman is not like you were like, this is a really smart move, or because what it was the announcement was they were going to make a black Superman, not that they cast a black actor as Superman. And that's two different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like the if you are saying you have this movie coming out, you're like, all right, we're going to do another Superman movie. And the trailer comes out and Superman just happens to be black. The people are still going to be pissed off, but you don't feel it as much as you do when they're like, hey, we're going to just go ahead and make a black Superman. And we're thinking Michael B. Jordan might be good. It's like, it almost, you're pandering at that point. It's not legitimate. You're hoping that people are going to be like, yeah, I'm on board with that. And I was not, because immediately I told you, I was like, they already have a black Superman-esque character. His name is Icon. Yeah. We could have easily done that.
Yeah.
But
and I agree totally. And one thing that someone brought up earlier, which is such a thing that people attack because they're like, oh, they gotta keep getting political, and it has nothing to do because there's so many actors who could play it. That I want to go on record and say this. I have a prediction about the next James Bond movie. Okay, I can't wait to see it. I already love it, and I haven't even watched it. You know, it's just like they dropped a new Tupac song. You know, I'm already going to be cheering. You know, that's how I feel about James Bond. But I want, you know, I imagine that they're going to kill off Daniel Craig because they have to. I mean, he's been at it for so long. You know, that's the only appropriate thing. But I also, I'm doing a prediction here of how they're going to close it. And we know that there's a new 00 in the movie, and she's black and she's a female. I want it to be right before credits roll. She's sitting at a bar. She just finished the last mission. Man walks up to her and she's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "Bond, Jane Bond." So that everyone can just melt. Their faces just melt, and all the trolls can be so angry because they're gonna make a great movie. I've seen the production value on this thing. It looks amazing. You know, and I want to be on record to say that that's got to be the closing scene and roll credits. Everyone just, you know, the internet will explode.
It will,
faces will explode, and it will be so perfect because that will finally prove what so many people have always thought, that James Bond is not a character. It is essentially a role, and all these people have fallen into it. And they're all James Bond, but they've all been different people, which would explain why we had Q for so many years. And the continuity continues there. But then it's like, but we're going to ignore that James Bond is always different. And that would be it. Just like Bond, Jane Bond. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see that. If that doesn't happen, I might set the theater on fire. But see,
don't do that.
That will not take anything away from the character. You know, it's like Idris Elba as the first black James Bond. Why do we even gotta bother saying the first black James? He's just James Bond. Like, is the man not English? You know, like it's like certain things have such a stigma around them that people will be up in arms when it has, again, the root of this. It takes nothing away from the character.
Right.
It doesn't change anything, but all of a sudden, you know, it's like they want to be up in arms about Starfire being black. And it's like,
that was a big one.
Yeah, that was a huge one. And then you look
especially
at
since
where
she's
it gets,
orange.
Yeah, right. Just like the whole thing with Gamora. It's like, okay, we're gonna have a black actress. She's gonna be painted completely in green, but we got one, you know. So you look at what's happening with movies, and it's when they do it, it seems like it's pandering. Just like you said, if they just started making a a Superman movie, and then all of a sudden, Superman's black. All right, cool. But that they have to announce it, that they have to shout it from the mountain to let everyone know this is what we're doing. That's when it feels like pandering. Take another character. Would it feel wrong if Bruce Wayne were black?
Yes.
Like, you know, it's like, in a modern context.
Well, I think I don't want to jump in front of Eddie, but
go ahead.
But what I do think is that, you know, if you go into the role, all the fuss that comes out is taking place before the movie actually comes out. Right. Once the movie comes out, if you deliver, people forget. Right. Because I'll be honest with you, Idris Elba, I think would crush a James Bond role. He'd be so good.
Oh, for sure.
And people would forget all about the fact that he's black. They'd just be watching the James Bond movie, you know? And I think about the fact that, you know, like you said, could Batman be black? Yeah, he could. And you know what, would people be weird about it at first before the movie? But if they go see the movie and whoever they cast as it crushes the role, people would just forget that he was black. It would just be Batman. And I think of the best example for that from me is I love Hamilton, right? Hamilton is my all-time favorite musical. Yeah. I've watched it. I've watched it maybe 100 times, right? I love this movie. But you know what's so funny is I've watched it so many times and these guys just crush the roles that I actually was going through a history thing the other day because my daughter's doing homework. And I saw Thomas Jefferson. I was like, oh yeah, he was white.
Like, oh man, that's crazy. Who knew?
What are the odds?
Yeah, I mean, and that is crazy because going back, I think the Bond thing was really important because Roger Moore specifically was the reason I got so up in arms because he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but mostly it's a quote, that Idris Elba cannot play James Bond because he's not English. And it was a nice way of saying white, but
Yeah.
it's
It was like, he's a product of colonization, not a colonizer. Like, how dare he?
yeah, it was just a weird thing for anyone to say, but let alone Roger Moore. Like, I don't know if he's in a place to start telling people who can play Bond or not. There's been a lot of pretty good ones. And I don't know where he ranks for me, but I don't know, man. Eddie, what you got?
Oh well, yeah, I think definitely like there's like that deeply ingrained racism, like the whole casting of like white people in roles like for like the past, you know, like 50 years in movies has like definitely led people to become more like uptight and like upset about what types of people can be cast into like certain roles. So like when you see somebody like it was Halle Berry that got casted for Little Mermaid.
Holly Berry. No, it's not Holly Berry. It's Holly something. I just don't remember her name. It's not Holly Berry. No, it's not Holly Berry.
Okay, well, yeah. Anyways,
I'd watch that movie still.
I would not. I would not. I'm over Holly Berry forever now.
Yeah, I think it's just that like you have these roles being casted like that for such a long time that people get really upset when they see like something different. And then I don't think it's a bad, I don't think it's a bad thing if it might be pandering, but I think it's a win, if black actors get casted into those roles because then you have like this new change and when people do good, there is like a perception that, like how you said when you watched Hamilton, Wayne, you forgot Jefferson was a white person, I think it's good because it could change people's perceptions of, what black people are more capable of. And, if I just with as, like James Bond, then, it could, keep the role going and there's less of a fuss. And it is kind of sad that, there's all that commotion before the movies and then people just forget. But I think it helps, change like the perceptions of black people in like, more commonly like known wider roles.
Right.
So I think blackwashing, isn't. I don't want to say it is a thing, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. I would say it's good because you'll have more of like this inclusion of different races, and we can have more of a variety of actors who could probably do better jobs at, better jobs than some of the Caucasian like counterparts that would be considered. So,
and like I said, you got to crush the role. That's really step 2. Step 1 is don't acknowledge the race in the role. Like if you did a black Batman, he still has to come from 2 billionaire parents. Don't make it like the Batman fought his way up from the ghetto. Like no, that's not. That's not going to work. You have to make it the way it was, and then let that guy crush the role, and you're going to change people's minds. And the best example I can think of for that, when we think of like different looking people than you'd expect, is I think of Peter Dinklage, right? So when you watch a movie with Peter Dinklage in it, aside from Elf, right, where he plays the short, but aside from Elf, Peter Dinklage, they never reference his height. You think of the movie Pixels, they don't make a single joke about his height. They don't mention it at all. It's just, and you know what? By the end of and at first you're like, wow, he's kind of short, right? And then, but literally 5 minutes into the film, you totally forget that you're looking at somebody who's 3 feet tall. You're just looking at another character in the movie because they don't reference it and they don't acknowledge it. So if you are going to change the race of a character, to try to get more inclusion and to try to get more diversity in roles, step number 1, do not acknowledge the race of the character. He's just that character. He's not a black character. He's not an Asian character. He's just Joe Wayne or whatever.
Yeah.
And actually, who excels at that is The Rock. Look at how many roles he's played where his race actually isn't acknowledged at all.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single one where anyone's ever brought where it's been a part of the movie. I think except for like one part of Be Cool when they were like, oh, that's his bodyguard. He's Samoan and black. And that's it. That's like, like kind of like it for it. But you're right. He has the benefit of getting like treated like a white actor because of it. I think he came in with a lot of fanfare and he didn't really have, he wasn't very good at first, but he was likable. And I think people just kept giving him a chance and he finally started crushing it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was going to say is, is I think my biggest problem why blackwashing has become a hot button issue as of late is because, and this is going to be, our final question is the lack of originality. If we're always rebooting everything and remaking everything and adapting everything, at some point we're not gonna have. It's gonna have to be that way. Otherwise, we're never the black actors are never gonna get a role, or Asian actors will never get a role, or Latino actors will never get a role, because a lot of the things we're rebooting and remaking and stuff like that are always at this point historically white for the most part. So does originality play a part in this? Does the lack of original programming, original content, original ideas, and are we dissuading people from wanting to make original ideas because of how successful reboots and remakes and adaptations are? We'll throw it over to you, Jeff.
Actually, that is a great place to end, because I could actually make an entire episode on this alone.
Well, we can't do that.
Yeah, I know. So, has anyone here seen the movie Rubber about the killer tire?
No, I have not.
Okay, look it up and find this movie, because behind Tropic Thunder, it is the next greatest deconstruction of Hollywood. Nothing in this movie makes sense, and it is brilliant, and it makes so much sense. Okay, so one part is that they have a crowd out in the desert, and they're like observing everything. It's very meta. Like, they're observing what's happening in the movie, like they're the audience, and they're just out there standing in the middle of the desert, like trying to follow the plot. And then, the person who would be like the sage, or the person moving the plot forward, shows up at one point with this giant turkey, because they're all starving. They're out here in the middle of the desert. He plops this giant turkey down on the ground in the dirt, and the crowd starts eating the turkey. And if that is not the perfect analogy for how Hollywood just keeps on cranking out these turkeys, and the people eat them even though they know they shouldn't, because, hey, they just flopped this turkey on the ground. Why am I going to eat it? Oh, because I'm hungry. That's the truth. Remakes, reboots, all of that. That's why Amazon buys MGM, so that they can get the IP, what MGM owns. And like, I think MGM, the only thing that comes to mind is Bond. Like, I can't think of anything.
I was going to say Tom and Jerry, but
right. It's like, what are you really getting out of this? But that's what people do. They want original stuff. They want new things. But then they're like, well, why am I going to pay $50 to go to the movies to see a new movie with a bunch of nobodies for a story that's brand new? I'm going to wait until it goes to Netflix or Redbox. But the 50th reboot of Star Trek, I'm all in for it, because, well, I have to be, because that's what I know. And you're so right, because when Hollywood, as much as people love to say anything about what they complain about, the results speak for themselves. So I'm going to go into politics and into film. It's like, oh, I hate that they just keep making reboots. Yeah, but that's what all you go see. It's like, oh, I hate negative campaign ads. Well, that's all you listen to. That's all you care for. And here's a funny one, because this is a Maury meme. All over social media, you'll see people say, I prefer a real enemy over a fake friend. Well, the election results determined that was a lie. So, as people fall into these ruts, they go after what they want, and that's all. And Hollywood has to reflect that, because they're going to go see the Batman, starring another Batman, another Batman now. At least the whole Spider-Man thing, they made it make sense with the MCU. And now we're all like, dude, are we going to get Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland? Like, we don't know, but it's enough to cause the interest. But then you're like, okay, another Batman, another Superman. Like, they didn't even, like, in my lifetime, I've seen 2 Wonder Womans, but I've seen Christopher Reeves, I've seen Smallville, I've seen Brandon Routh, I've seen Henry Cavill, and now I might see Michael B. Jordan. Like, I'm like,
a lot of Supermans.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, let's give people something original, but people won't show up to see it. And when it is successful, then you get a billion of those. Fast and the Furious was something that was completely new because it completely ripped off Point Break. But but it was new and it was different. And now we're at the 9th one. You know, we had A Quiet Place, which was a breakthrough success. Now we have part 2, because if someone strikes the gold, they're going to keep hammering it out. Yeah, they're going to keep hammering it out. And now it's locked into where you can't get any original anything to give minorities a bigger shot. You know, how did we get Idris Elba into the MCU? They cast him as Heimdall, which took nothing away from the role, but that was it. Like, he was locked in there and there was nothing else that could be done. You know, so without original content, we can't get anything new. And unfortunately, people don't show up for anything new.
Yeah. All right, Eddie, what you got?
Let me say everything like a couple minutes before. I think nostalgia is the big factor in these reboots. You know, a lot of people they're just nostalgic and they see something being remade from you know, their childhood that they just want to come see it again, like the Animaniacs. You know,
I still haven't been able to bring myself to watch it.
Me neither, actually. But you know, that's like a big thing. You know, and I don't think it's going to go away like anytime soon, because people are comfortable with, you know, what they're familiar with. And you know, I would rather, some people just rewatch shows just because they're not interested in watching anything new. You know, and it's a big problem. And I really don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, to be honest. We're going to see reboots of things like several times, and it's,
once they reboot Jaws, I know we failed. I know we're dead. That's it. That's it. The world's most simplest and most easily digestible movie is Jaws. And if we remake that to make it complicated, would you consider the Meg like a Jaws remake?
No.
Okay. All right, then we're good. We're still good. There's hope.
They failed already when they said they were gonna make another Home Alone remake.
Oh my god!
Yes.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I thought it was a joke. So that's legit. They're actually gonna make a Home Alone, another one.
I'm not
pre-production.
It's
last I heard was it was in pre-production as far as getting the writing team together.
What do you?
Which is like
it's already written.
Yeah.
It's there. All the material is there for you. Just shoot it again, I guess. All right, Wade, it's on you.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, there's a lack of originality, and yes, that leads to fewer roles, because again, if you cast people of color into roles that have previously been played by Caucasians, you're going to get that backlash, right? So having originality opens up more roles for people who, it doesn't matter what color they are, because it's a new role. It's a new person, right? You can set the tone. You can set the standard. But like you're saying, the people are clamoring for the remakes. People are clamoring for that. And why? Because have you ever watched a movie more than once?
Yes.
Why? Because you know you like it, right? And it's the same thing with movies. Why am I going to go watch a reboot of Iron Man? Because I know I like the original, you know? So it's like you're going to do with what's safe. It's safe. You're not taking a risk. You're not wasting your money to go see something you're not going to like, you know? But I think that the movie companies have to take us out of that as consumers. Instead of, you know, placating the consumer, give them something new to try and see if they like it. And that's where I think that this Amazon deal is actually a good thing, because I think a lot of times if you see a movie like the Underground Railroad, right, is an Amazon original, right? But how many people are really watching that? But if it was an MGM movie, it's going to be in the theaters. Right. You know, and it's going to get pub and it's going to get Oscars and people are going to go see it because it's going to get that recognition. So I think what Amazon did, yes, they're getting the intellectual property from MGM, but what I think they're really getting is the MGM name and the theater presence. And because Amazon does so much original content, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more minorities getting roles in original content that's going to be in the theater, because now they have a major studio that is behind it.
Agreed. Because I think even with like One Night in Miami, which I absolutely loved, was something I just didn't see coming or seeing ever actually happening at all. But I will say for me, remakes and reboots are like a soft spot, because I will say that I have not intentionally watched any Disney remakes, although I have been, I have been around when they have been on. But I have something about it just tells me like, we don't have to do this. There's no reasoning for it. Like, and what you were saying, Wayne, and pretty much everybody was when you try and do something new, people don't go see it. But when they do, we have to kind of like strike while the iron is hot and do it again really, really quick. You know, I look at Get Out as one of those ones that just exceeded expectations because it was completely original. We have a new young director. We have a young cast, all these relative unknowns for the most part, with the exception of a few people, and it did so well. And and at some point, I know 15 years from now, somebody is going to remake Get Out, and it's going to just be weird. And I think what you said, Wayne, was what I've been saying for a long time. And the best analogy I can use is pro wrestling. So in the 90s, Hulk Hogan was like the greatest thing ever, and everyone loved Hulk Hogan, and he was just the greatest of great guys. But then he went to WCW. At the time, the NWO was running rampant. One of the things that changed wrestling forever was Hogan joining the NWO. The fans didn't want that. They wanted the same Hogan we've been getting. But once that happened, people were introduced to something new, something different, and wrestling as a business just skyrocketed after that. We had a relatively good person who just turned evil on us, and nobody knew it was coming. Nobody expected it. Nobody wanted it. But sometimes you have to give people what they don't want in order to keep them entertained. And I think that's a lot of what's happening. It's easy to reboot, you know, to see Spider-Man for the third time because we all know we like Spider-Man, like Wayne was saying. Like, yeah, if you do another X-Men, I've seen all those X-Men movies, and you know, a lot of them aren't good, but because I'm such an X-Men stan, I'm gonna go watch them. You've already got me. Like, there's nothing I can do. I am predisposed to go watch Star Wars because I love Star Wars. Regardless of the outcome, I'm gonna go see it. But if no one ever gives us anything new, how are we gonna know what we like? You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where you have to take a chance. And I feel like a lot of people are afraid to take chances now, because the easy way out is to just take an intellectual property that exists and say, hey, let's do it again. People loved it the first time. Why wouldn't they love it again? You know, I didn't even see the Total Recall remake, but I'm sure it was pretty good. I don't know. But I feel like at a certain point, it's easy money to be like, hey, Total Recall, you guys remember that, right? And me and my dad were like, hell yeah, we remember Total Recall. Like, you know what I mean? So we were excited for a movie we didn't even know was going to be any good. And I think we do need more original content. That's how you get more actors. That's how you get a lot more people of color, or just in general, just different people other than huge name actors. But like Wayne was saying, you have to take it out of the consumer's hand.
You know what? I think the only good thing that could probably come out of remakes is, you know, if they made remakes of movies that were originally hyped that they could have done better on. That, you know, they could probably remake and then, you know, actually do it to, you know, the fans' expectations, or
a remake like tanked movies.
Yeah, like tanked movies that didn't do as good. I want to say
Jumper. I Am Number 4.
Yeah, I didn't even see I Am Number 4. It looked bad in the trailers.
It's awful. It's bad.
I've never seen a trailer just look so boring.
You know, if they could go back and remake, you know, movies that flopped that I had high expectations for, you know, that would be.
What's a movie you would remake?
Who's first?
You say Looper?
Maybe like Hellraiser. You know, some of the older movies. I don't fucking know.
We put them on the spot.
Yeah. I don't know if I could remake anything. I don't know. I don't think I've seen a movie. No, I have, but it doesn't need to be remade. It was Darkness, I think that was called, with Anna Paquin. I don't know what that movie was, but it bored me, and I fell asleep in the theater. That's all I can remember.
I mean, they made Mortal Kombat and it sucked, and so they keep making them and throwing more and more money at them, and they can't stop them from sucking.
Yeah, it's. Don't tell Jeff that.
No. I can acknowledge how bad it was, but I still loved it. Like, I love campy. I love campy when it's campy with purpose. Like, that's why I didn't even become a fan of the Furious franchise until Fast 5. Because up until that point,
they were taking themselves too serious.
They were trying so hard to be so serious. Like, in a world of trust, my family, you know? And then in Fast 5, they're like, okay, you see this right here? these are all of Newton's and Einstein's laws and theories. We're just going to throw this out the window, and we're just going to say that this car has 50 gears. Okay. If we need Vin Diesel to have a close-up shot of him in the cockpit, we're just going to have him shift gears. Like, hasn't he already, like, how many gears this is? How long is that runway? You know, like the entire movie. You can just ignore it all, because when it's campy for the sake of being campy, you get Kano, and he kills it. Kills it. So I can love that movie and I can appreciate it. But if you do an actual breakdown of it, yes, I will admit that it was a bad movie, just like the original Mortal Kombat was a bad movie. Still love both of them. And I'm going to own Mortal Kombat just like I own the original Mortal Kombat. But I do not own Mortal Kombat Annihilation, because that was a movie that was just bad for the sake of being bad.
I don't know. Look, I think I'm probably the minority here, but I think Mortal Kombat Annihilation was so much better just because of how they literally threw everything and the kitchen sink. They were just like, here you go. Oh, you guys wanted Jax? Well, you're gonna get it. You guys wanted Reptile? Here's 3 more. Like, look,
bad.
You guys were saying that Christopher Lambert was bad as Raiden. Well, guess what? We got James Reed Barnes dead. Like, it is a clusterfuck in like the best way possible.
Well, that's why you love Space Jam.
Space Jam is the best worst movie of all time. It's terrible, but it's like good terrible. I love it. But
yeah, a remake that I would want to see redone. I never want to see it. Like, I didn't watch the RoboCop. I didn't watch the Total Recall. You know, because for me, those movies are iconic and they're perfect, and they existed in the time that they existed. They made perfect sense for them. What happens when you want to have a high concept idea like Total Recall without ripping off the movie? You get one of the best sci-fi movies ever called Minority Report. Completely different, completely original, but they went on their own tangent. But again, you know, it's like, where were the black people in that movie? You know, so it's like, damn, you know, it's like,
those were the future criminals that they were about to arrest. That's what that was.
Yeah, right. Like everyone in the hollow prison is
yeah.
It's like, well, we knew what you were gonna do. So, but still, you know, it's like they can create original things, but even when they create original things, what do they have to do? They have to put the big, huge name, just like Wayne said, and it's absolutely true, because Hollywood cannot take a risk with minorities. But they can fail a billion times. You know, they can keep giving certain directors movies, regardless of what you think of them, you know, based on like a Wes Anderson or
Hey. The Fantastic Mr. Fox is a great movie, all right? You're not going to convince me otherwise.
But see, there are certain things that it's like, it doesn't even matter if they make great movies.
Right.
You could still make fun of Michael Bay, but he still churns out something like Pain and Gain, you know? So it's like, but still, it's like,
Pain and Gain negate all the bad Transformers.
Yes, because we still have Transformers. Yes, because Transformers 1 was still good.
Yeah,
Dark of the Moon was still good.
No.
You know,
15 minutes of Dark of the Moon was really good.
I see that's where I go into the whole campiness where I love Dark of the Moon.
We don't got to get into that. We don't got to get into that.
But yeah, but so when it comes to original content, you just can't get the risk. You can't get minority directors. You can't get minority actors. Hollywood will not take the risk on it. And that's a huge problem. And I made the joke. I was like, I actually want Jordan Peele to make an epic period drama called Valhalla, which dictates like all the horrors of Norse sailors and cast nothing but black people. Like, I think that would be hilarious. And it's like, well, you cast nothing but white people for all the African movies. So why does it matter if we cast a bunch of black people? We're not acknowledging their race. They're Norse sailors. They're out on the Scandinavian seas dealing with the Kraken. Like, what? Black people? Oh, you're gonna say that they can't swim? Like, what's the problem? So it's like, you know,
there's a piece. I don't know if anyone's ever watched Psyched, but there's a scene where they're investigating like a play, and the play, he was like, Gus was like, well, I noticed you don't have a lot of black people in your play, and he was like, well, it's set in England in 1700 whatever, and he was like, So what are you saying? Black people hadn't been invented yet? Like,
exactly.
That always makes me laugh because it does feel like that at time when that's the reasoning. When you're like, oh, this movie takes place at this time. It's like, what's your point?
Yeah,
the movie. We're allowed to bend the rules of reality for a movie.
Eric was a Danish prince. The Ariel can't be black.
That's stupid. All right, Wayne, what you got? Any remake? Anything?
I don't know off the top of my head if there would be any remakes. I can say that I'm jealous of Jeff that he hasn't seen the new RoboCop because unfortunately I did, and it is really
I did
bad.
too. I did. It was the hand thing that bothered me the most. The one free hand.
Well, RoboCop, because we're talking about good bad movies. RoboCop's such a bad movie, but I love it to death. And so when they redid it, I thought, oh, new CGI, right? New cool graphics. You know, like him in all black suit. That's kind of cool, right? He's riding a motorcycle, whatever. And then I watched it and I was just like, oh my God, I can't deal with this. It's so bad. And like you said, at least the campy movies that, you know, they know that they're campy, you know, are fine. Like RoboCop knew what it was. The Sucks 3000 and the, you know, all those stupid commercials. Right? I'd buy that for $1. Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, the new one tried to be too serious. You know, it lost all the, you know, the good stuff from the original.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say just for me, like I don't think there's anything particularly I would remake because, you know, what I think my favorite movie is Ninja Turtles, the original. And to me, it's one of those ones like once you realize exactly what you are,
bad, but it's good.
First off, you watch your mouth, all right? This is not bad at all. The movie is great because one of the things it does is it takes this ultra campy thing that we all knew, which was the Ninja Turtles, and turn it into something a little more based in realism while still keeping all the camp. And it did it perfectly. Number 2 and 3 kind of went more for the camp. And, you know, 3 we don't talk about because it doesn't exist. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. But I do think that as a whole, I do think that original content is going to be detrimental to how Hollywood perceives wins and losses, so to speak, because you could even look at like Netflix. I think the biggest problem with Netflix movies is they aren't being reviewed high enough and they aren't being reviewed by enough people to where it matters, because you even have I don't know if it was Martin Scorsese or one of them guys who says Netflix movies aren't really real movies or something like that. I don't think it was Martin Scorsese because he has a movie on Netflix.
Scorsese called Marvel movies like theme park movies.
Yeah. You know, and I even think that that's a dangerous sentiment from certain people. Martin Scorsese is well respected. Him telling a lot of people who respect him in that way that these aren't real movies and they're ruining cinema and no one's ever good, the movies are never going to recover from this or whatever the case may be, is like, Eddie, why would you do that, man? that's not what I was talking about. That's not the one I was talking about. But yeah, I mean, I think that like the original content, like you said, Amazon has the Underground Railroad. If it was a movie with the MGM title instead of just a show, it would probably be much bigger and we'd have something original to look at. But then on the flip side of that, I get that consumers are easy. You know what I mean? You sell them what you can sell them. You basically say, hey, you guys like that thing, right? We're going to do it like 4 more times. And now, you know, that's how you get 3 Iron Man movies, like 4 Captain America movies and stuff like that, and then that's how you get them to be combined in a bigger universe, which at first I didn't think was even going to be a thing. It shouldn't. We should just have one-offs, but instead we've got a bigger universe, which turned out to be pretty great. But how are we going to do it again? Well, they're about to, you know what I mean? So it's like, you don't have to wonder about it. They're going to do it again because it worked so well the first time that we have to do this whole combined universe thing again. And at a certain point, I think there's going to be fatigue. You know, people are going to have, it's just going to be harder to get up and go see these kids, especially since a lot of the ones we fell in love with aren't even going to be there. No Steve Rogers, no Iron Man. We're going to have the Eternals. Like, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy was already a pretty big risk because they were relative unknowns to people who don't read comics. So it was kind of like, is it going to work? And it worked. And it launched careers for Chris Pratt, and he's doing movies he shouldn't be in and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So, all right, guys. So final thoughts. What did you guys think of the show? You know, would you like to be back? Any of that stuff?
Are you kidding me? I'm already filing the show on my taxes.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much you're making. We're not getting paid at all for this. What about you, Eddie?
definitely gotta get down to like a little bit more research and watch a couple more movies because you guys are way bigger like a film and like comic buffs than I am.
I mean, the conversations aren't going to just be, you know, with movies. They're going all over the place. Like I said, last week we were talking about Batman and his contributions to Gotham. You know what I mean? It could go either way. I don't even know what I'm going to do next week, but I'll have the topic up. I'll post it up. And if you guys would love to be a part of it again, I'd love to have you. I mean, I have a lot of fun just talking about things that I enjoy talking about.
Definitely love to be part of it next time, for sure.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I definitely look forward to doing it again sometime, regardless of the topic. I got anything pop culture, I'm down. If you guys want to talk about best bands, or you guys want to talk about books, you want to talk about movies, TV shows, I mean, all that stuff, I'm down with all of that.
I'm down.
So anything like that, I'm definitely interested.
All right, man. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for all contributing. Until next week, I don't have a cool sign off yet. I haven't thought of anything, but yeah. See you guys next time. That's all I got.
Like, how about them Bears?
Nah, don't do that. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.